What happens when a hardworking man is pushed to his limits by a toxic boss? He doesn't just stand up for himself, he builds a legacy. This is the story of how one man's fight for respect changed everything, not just for him, but for an entire community. Stay tuned to see how Raymond Carter turned adversity into opportunity and built something far bigger than a construction company. You won't want to miss this. Please, before we start this story, support us by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and tell us where you're watching from. We love to hear your thoughts. It was supposed to be another routine morning at the Mason-Build-Cumber construction site in Austin, Texas. The sun hadn't even fully risen, but the air was already thick with heat and humidity. Trucks rumbled into position, drills buzzed to life, and steel beams clanged as they were lifted into place. Among the dozens of workers hustling around was Raymond Carter, broad-shouldered, soft-spoken, and respected by everyone on site. He'd been working construction for over 20 years. The kind of guy who didn't talk much, but when he did, everyone listened. Raymond arrived early, as usual, reviewing the plans and giving pointers to the younger guys. Not out of ego, just to keep them safe. "Watch the rebar near the footing," he said to one rookie, pointing with his glove. "Trip on that, and you'll be flying face first into concrete." Then a sleek black SUV rolled up, kicking dust into the morning air. Out stepped Derek Langley, the newly transferred project engineer from Chicago. He was everything Raymond wasn't: tall, smug, and overdressed for a construction site. His boots looked more expensive than Raymond's monthly rent, and his reflective vest was too clean to have ever seen a day's work. Derek walked with purpose and arrogance. Clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched high on his head, Bluetooth headset blinking. He barely looked at the workers as he passed them, offering nothing but grunts and sideways glances. "Hey, you, what's your name?" Derek barked as he pointed to Raymond across the lot. Raymond turned slowly, wiping sweat from his brow. "Raymond Carter," Derek smirked. "Right, Ray. You're not in charge here. If you've got something to say, take it up with someone who actually has a degree." A few workers nearby paused, glancing at each other nervously. Derek was new, but already rubbing people the wrong way. "I wasn't trying to be in charge," Raymond said calmly, "just helping the new guys with safety protocol." Derek laughed, loud and obnoxious. "Safety? What do you know about safety? You're probably one of those learned from the streets types. Let the engineers do the thinking." Raymond's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Years in the business had taught him that some people talk loudest when they know the least. He nodded once and walked away, ignoring the snickers Derek tried to pull from the crew. "Don't go too far," Derek called out after him. "If I need someone to sweep up sawdust, I'll let you know." Behind his back, some of the workers shook their heads, one muttered under his breath, "He's messing with the wrong man." Because what Derek didn't know, what he hadn't bothered to learn in his arrogance, was that Raymond Carter wasn't just a worker. He was the senior site coordinator. And if Derek had bothered to check the staff list posted outside the trailer office, he'd have seen that Raymond had the authority to hire and fire anyone on site, even engineers like him. And Derek, he'd just started digging his own grave. The sun beat down harder by midweek, and so did Derek Langley's ego. Ever since his arrival, the mood on the site had shifted. Workers kept their heads low, morale dipped, and simple tasks took longer because no one wanted to attract attention. Not from him. Derek strutted around like he was filming a TV show, barking orders into his Bluetooth headset and nitpicking every detail of the crew's work. He questioned measurements that were already double-checked, criticized equipment he didn't know how to use, and rolled his eyes every time someone asked for clarification. "Seriously?" he scoffed at Miguel, one of the youngest workers, after he asked about the beam placement. "It's basic geometry. Didn't you people go to school?" Raymond overheard that one. He clenched his jaw, stepping between Miguel and Derek before things escalated. He did the right thing by asking. That's how mistakes and injuries get avoided. Derek laughed. "You gonna lecture me now, Ray? What are you, the job site philosopher?" "No," Raymond replied evenly. "Just someone who knows the value of listening." But Derek didn't want advice, especially not from a black man in dusty jeans and work boots. He waved him off and walked away, muttering something under his breath. The tension was getting harder to ignore. Lisa Matthews, the foreman, and the only person with authority close to Raymond's level, noticed it too. After lunch that day, she caught up with Raymond near the main trailer. "You all right?" she asked, crossing her arms. "That guy's been at your throat since day one." Raymond wiped his face with a bandana and gave a tired sigh. "I've dealt with his type before. Loud mouth, soft core." Lisa frowned. "He's causing waves. He put in a complaint yesterday. Said you were undermining his role." Raymond raised an eyebrow. "Undermining? I've barely spoken to the man." "Doesn't matter to people like him. They see a man like you giving orders and think it's a threat. Never mind that you've been doing this job longer than he's been alive." Raymond shook his head. Let him keep showing his true colors. And Derek was doing just that. He began making daily calls to the regional office, filing exaggerated reports about inefficiency and unqualified workers. He told them Raymond was insubordinate, that Lisa had a bias toward underperformers. He even suggested that safety standards were being ignored. Ironically, the very thing Raymond had always enforced. But what Derek didn't know was that all of his calls were being logged and quietly flagged by HR. He also didn't know that Lisa had already submitted multiple formal observations about his behavior, complete with witness accounts and timestamps. Raymond, meanwhile, kept doing his job, quietly, diligently. But every time Derek disrespected a crew member or made a snide remark, Raymond made a note of it, not on paper, but in his mind. And when the moment came to take action, he planned to make it loud, clear, and very public. Derek was too arrogant to see the storm coming, but it was already on the horizon. By Thursday morning, Derek Langley's arrogance had reached new heights, and so had the risk level on the site. It started when the concrete mixer arrived early. The schedule had changed slightly, and Derek, in his usual dismissive fashion, insisted they begin the pour without waiting for the final structural recheck. "We're losing daylight," he snapped. "I'm not sitting around just because Ray wants to play safety patrol." Raymond, who had just finished a quick walkthrough of the rebar layout, approached calmly. "Derek, that section hasn't been inspected yet. If the concrete goes in and there's an alignment issue, it could compromise the whole slab." Derek smirked. "Yeah, well, I'll take that risk. I've got an engineering degree and 6 figures of student debt to prove I know what I'm doing." Raymond stared at him for a long moment. "That's not how this works." But Derek waved him off. "If you don't want to help, fine. Go back to measuring tape and lunch breaks." Lisa overheard the exchange and stepped in. "Derek, site policy requires final approval before a major pour, especially with structural framing involved." "I'm the project engineer," Derek shot back. "Not you, not him. So unless you two have suddenly been promoted to head office, this pour is happening." The tension was electric. Workers paused, waiting to see how Raymond would respond, but he simply nodded. "All right," he said. "Do it your way." Derek smiled, thinking he'd won. 2 hours later, the consequences arrived. As the concrete flowed and hardened, the crew began spotting alignment problems. Bolts didn't match the anchor points, and part of the rebar cage had shifted. It was a foundational mess. Fixable, but costly. Delays were now guaranteed, and the client's inspector, who happened to show up unannounced, documented everything. "Who signed off on this?" the inspector asked sharply. "Derek Langley," Lisa answered without hesitation. Derek's face turned pale. He tried to explain, but the inspector wasn't having it. "This wasn't ready, and judging by the layout plan, you skipped a structural check." Raymond stood silently nearby, arms crossed. Later that afternoon, as workers stood around waiting for direction, Derek paced nervously behind the trailer. He called the regional office again, this time trying to spin the disaster as a crew misunderstanding. He blamed Raymond again, saying he refused to cooperate. What Derek didn't know was that the regional director, Thomas Greer, had just gotten off the phone with Lisa and had already called HR. Raymond didn't say a word to Derek for the rest of the day. He didn't have to, because tomorrow morning Raymond had a meeting scheduled in the main trailer, and this time he'd be the one doing the talking, with a full audience. Raymond didn't say a word to Derek for the rest of the day. He didn't have to, because tomorrow morning Raymond had a meeting scheduled in the main trailer, and this time He'd be the one doing the talking, with a full audience. And Derek? He'd finally learned who he was really dealing with. The real boss on this job site was about to remind everyone why experience, integrity, and respect still mattered. Friday morning dawned heavy and humid. Clouds rolled in above the Austin skyline, casting a thick gray over the construction site. But what was brewing inside the main trailer was even heavier. At 7:30 a.m., sharp, Raymond Carter walked across the gravel lot toward the trailer with his clipboard tucked under one arm. His steel-toed boots were worn but sturdy, just like him. He gave a few nods to the crew, most of whom had caught wind of the drama unfolding between him and Derek. They didn't say much, but the looks in their eyes said enough. They were ready for someone to stand up to the man who'd been throwing dirt on everyone all week. Inside the trailer, Lisa was already seated beside Thomas Greer, the regional director, a no-nonsense man in his 50s with salt and pepper hair and a reputation for handling problems swiftly. Derek stood stiffly in the corner, flipping through a thick binder of paperwork and clearly trying to look busy. His cocky grin had vanished overnight. "Good morning," Greer said as Raymond entered. "Let's get straight to it." Raymond nodded and took his seat, calm and composed. "Mr. Langley," Greer began, turning to Derek, "we've received conflicting reports about the site's efficiency, safety protocol, and chain of command. Since you arrived, multiple complaints have been filed, not just from the workers, but from our foreman, inspector, and even the concrete supplier. Care to explain?" Derek shifted nervously. "Look, I'm just trying to get things moving. This site's been running slow. Corners were being cut, and I stepped in to fix it. Raymond, he's been undermining me, acting like he runs the place." Greer raised an eyebrow. "Interesting, because according to every official document, Mr. Carter does run the place. He's the senior site coordinator and directly oversees operations. That includes you." Derek blinked, confused. "Wait, what?" Lisa chimed in. "It was posted on the staff board the day you arrived. You just didn't bother to read it." Raymond leaned forward, finally speaking. "I tried to let you find your footing, Derek. I know what it's like being the new guy. But what you've been doing isn't leadership. It's disrespect and recklessness. And yesterday's pour? That mistake cost us tens of thousands and set us back a week. I didn't think—" "No, you didn't," Raymond interrupted, but not angrily, just firmly. "You thought experience didn't matter if it didn't come with a degree. You saw a black man in a hard hat and assumed I was beneath you?" The silence that followed was thick. Greer stood up, closing his folder. "Derek Langley, as of this morning, your contract with Mason Build Co. is terminated. HR will follow up. You'll be escorted off-site after collecting your things." Derek looked stunned. "You can't be serious. I was just trying to—" Raymond stood, meeting him eye to eye. "This site needs leaders who listen, not ones who destroy trust." And with that, Derek was done. As he packed up, the trailer door opened and several workers peeked in, pretending to check blueprints, while catching a glimpse of what justice looked like. Raymond didn't gloat. He just walked out, back to work, respected, steady, and stronger than ever. After Derek was escorted off the site, a quiet energy swept across the construction zone, like the air just after a thunderstorm. The tension that had hung thick for days finally lifted. Crews moved with more ease. Radios crackled with real instructions instead of insults. And for the first time all week, you could hear laughter between hammer strikes and welding torches. Raymond Carter didn't change his routine. He grabbed his clipboard, walked the perimeter, and checked on progress like he always did. But now something was different. Heads turned when he passed by, not in fear or skepticism, but in admiration. The younger workers especially seemed to walk a little taller just by being seen with him. At lunchtime, instead of heading to the usual quiet spot near the materials shed, Raymond found himself waved over to the picnic tables where the crew normally gathered. "Ray," Miguel called out, scooting over to make room. "Sit with us today, man. We owe you." Raymond chuckled and sat down. "You don't owe me anything. Just glad we can breathe again." Troy, one of the crane operators, leaned in. "Nah, seriously, most folks would have clapped back at Derek the first day, but you stayed cool and let him hang himself with his own rope. He tried to throw you under the bus like 3 times, Lisa added, grabbing her sandwich. You could have gone straight to Greer, but you let the facts speak. That's how you lead, Raymond said. Not with yelling or titles, but by knowing your people, protecting the work, and making sure nobody gets hurt, physically or otherwise. Miguel grinned. You taught us that. Even before Derek, I watched how you handled stuff. When that scaffolding almost collapsed last month, you didn't yell. You taught. That matters, man. Raymond looked around the table at the sweaty, dust-covered faces of the men and women who'd been insulted, ignored, or underestimated far too often. They weren't just laborers. They were welders, planners, architects of a skyline no one would ever know by name. But that wouldn't stand without them. He lifted his water bottle and raised it. To the crew, to the folks who actually make things happen. They clinked bottles, soda cans, and coffee mugs in return. Later that day, Lisa walked up beside him while he was double-checking a shipment manifest. You know, Greer called me after the meeting, she said. He wants you to consider a promotion, regional oversight, said they need more people like you running multiple sites. Raymond looked surprised. That's a big ask. You're ready, she said, and people are watching, especially the young ones. He paused, then smiled. I'll think about it. Lisa nodded. Just don't take too long. We need you up there as much as we need you down here. As she walked away, Raymond looked out over the site, scaffolding rising into the sky, welders torching steel beams into place, and the sound of progress echoing like music. Respect wasn't handed to him. He'd earned it, inch by inch, with calloused hands and a calm voice. And now the foundation he was building wasn't just concrete, it was legacy. The following Monday, the site buzzed with a renewed energy. Without Derek's ego clogging the workflow, everything moved like a well-oiled machine. There were fewer delays, less tension, and more communication. Even the newer guys, usually quiet and cautious, started asking more questions, taking initiative, and showing confidence. Raymond noticed it all but said little. He just kept doing what he'd always done, leading by example. But behind the scenes, word of what happened had traveled faster than a jackhammer on concrete. At the Mason Build Company downtown headquarters, Thomas Greer had shared a full report with the company's executives. He'd highlighted not only Derek's failures, but Raymond's calm leadership, steady hand, and ability to unite a fractured team. That Tuesday, Raymond received a formal invitation to a regional leadership conference in Dallas. The email subject line simply read, "Time to rise." He chuckled when he read it. Lisa wasn't kidding. Later that day, while checking the site's north wing framing, he saw a familiar face jogging toward him. Isaiah, one of the new apprentices who had been most affected by Derek's early insults. "Hey, Mr. Carter," Isaiah said, a little out of breath. "You got a minute?" Raymond smiled. "Always." Isaiah looked nervous. I wanted to say thank you for how you handled everything. A few weeks ago, I thought about quitting. Thought this whole thing wasn't for me." Raymond tilted his head. "What changed?" "You. Watching how you dealt with Derek, the way you didn't blow up or fight back, you just let your work speak. That hit me hard. I figured if a man like you can come up through all this and still lead with your head high, maybe I got a shot too." Raymond looked him in the eye. "You do, but remember, it's not just about being skilled with tools. It's about staying grounded, knowing who you are, and never letting someone else define your worth." Isaiah nodded slowly, the words settling into his spirit like steel into concrete. "And one more thing," Raymond added, "learn everything, from everyone. You don't have to shout to prove you belong, just be better every day." As Isaiah walked back to his station, Raymond turned back to the site with a thoughtful expression. This was why he stayed in the field, why he didn't chase corner offices or shiny titles. It wasn't just about buildings, it was about people, lifting others as he climbed. That evening, Lisa caught up with him again. "You think you'll go to Dallas?" Raymond shrugged. "Maybe, but not to chase a title, only if it means I can keep doing what matters." "You ever think of starting your own firm?" she asked. "You've got the know-how, the people, the respect." He smiled. "I have, and maybe it's time." Lisa grinned. "If you do, I'm sending my resume first." Raymond laughed. "Deal." And just like that, the next blueprint of his life began to take shape, one that reached far beyond any construction site. Because some legacies aren't built with concrete, they're built with character. 6 months had passed since the day Derek Langley was escorted off the site. In that time, a lot had changed, both on the ground and in the hearts of the people who worked there. The Austin project was nearly complete. A gleaming mixed-use complex stood where once there'd been nothing but dirt and tension. The buildings soared proudly, but to Raymond Carter, the real victory wasn't in the concrete or the steel. It was in the people who built it, and the way they came together after being torn apart. Raymond had turned down the Dallas position. Instead, he did something bolder. With support from Lisa, Miguel, and a few former colleagues, he launched Carter & Company. Construction, a minority-owned firm dedicated to hiring and training workers from overlooked communities, people with skill, heart, and hunger who just needed a real shot. His first client? Mason Build Company. Even Thomas Greer, initially skeptical, admitted it was the right move. "You turned a toxic site into a model operation," Greer had told him. "Now we want that same magic on every project." With that deal signed, Raymond had offices in Austin and San Antonio and was already being approached for projects in Houston and Dallas. But he never let the titles change who he was. He still wore the same boots, still kept a hard hat in his truck, and still visited the job sites personally, because that's where the real work happened. On a crisp Friday morning, Raymond stood in front of a new crew at a groundbreaking event for an affordable housing development on the city's east side. There were journalists, photographers, city officials, but Raymond only had eyes for the young faces in the crowd. Apprentices, some barely out of high school, veterans starting over, single parents learning trades. It was a new beginning for all of them. He stepped up to the mic, looked out, and began. "I wasn't always the guy with his name on the trucks. I was the guy overlooked, underestimated, and talked down to. I know what it's like to be judged by your skin before they know your skills. But I also know what it's like to earn respect, not by yelling, but by showing up every day, giving your best, and lifting others as you climb." He paused, eyes locking with Isaiah, now a full-time employee and team leader. "This company isn't just about buildings. It's about rebuilding dignity, giving people a place to grow, to believe, and to lead. No matter where you come from, there's a place for you here." The crowd clapped, not out of politeness, but because they felt it. After the ceremony, Lisa walked up beside him. "You ever think this would happen?" Raymond smiled as he looked over the lot where construction would soon begin. "Number. But I always hoped it would, and I built for it, day by day, brick by brick." Just then, a breeze swept across the lot, carrying the scent of fresh earth and new dreams. The sound of power tools started humming in the distance, signaling the beginning of another project, another chance. And as Raymond stood there, boots planted, heart full, he knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning of what he was meant to build. Raymond Carter's journey from underappreciated worker to respected leader and business owner is a testament to the power of hard work, resilience, and staying true to your values. His story shows that real leadership isn't about titles or recognition. It's about lifting others up, creating opportunities, and building something meaningful that lasts. If you found Raymond's journey inspiring, don't forget to share this story with others. Remember, your story could be the next one to inspire change. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and stay tuned for more incredible stories of triumph, leadership, and hope. Thank you for watching.